Not at all.
Anybody who follows you on Twitter or on social media knows you're a busy man.
Yeah.
A very busy man.
Mainly busy tweeting.
I mean, how do you find time to do all of these projects?
Do you know the weird thing? I actually manage my time so well that I'm so relaxed. It looks like I'm doing lots of things, but I'm never that stressed. It's great. Like, I really work 4 days a week. I do a 4-day week, and I've done that for 2 years, and it's fantastic. I really love it. What I did was I upped my hours Monday to Thursday, and then took Fridays off. So my weekend lasts 3 days. It's amazing. So I do the same amount of work, but I just condense it European style into 4 days. And when I say working, I'm watching cats on skateboards, and I'm watching Twitter. I mean, I tweet every 5 seconds or something, you know. And I feel like I'm working because I'm typing, but in reality I'm tweeting, you know. So yeah, I've done that for a couple of years, and weirdly, I think my output has gone up since I've actually sort of like done a 4-day week. So that's my recommendation to everyone.
Okay, well, you were talking about work. I would say, how has it changed for you over the years? I mean, did you start, pen and paper and everything like that, and now you've got an iPad and things like that. So how's it changed for you since you initially started to what you're doing now?
Do you know, it's funny, it happens so gradually that you don't realise that you go from an outsider to being absolutely in the heart of the establishment. You know, and it happens so subtly. I always think I haven't changed at all, and then I think, no, actually life has changed quite a lot, you know, but you don't actually realise it because it happens so incrementally. But I still hang around with all my friends from primary school. Like my best friends from primary 1 are like my best friends now, you know, we've known each other our whole lives, and they're sort of fascinated by it, you know, like in my family. I mean, I've got a huge family, and I still live within 10 miles of almost everyone in my sort of family network up in Scotland. So like, so they're fascinated by it. They're like, this is weird, you know, your life's really changed, you know, like if they see you in the paper or on TV or something, it's a bit of a novelty and everything. But when it's yourself, it happens so quietly, you don't even notice it. You just suddenly think you're not getting the bus anymore, somebody's giving you a driver. You know, that kind of thing. It's weird. Like the first time I went to LA, I remember waiting at bus stops and getting lost and all that kind of thing, and I was there 3 weeks ago and somebody gave me a driver for 3 days, you know. And it's wee things like that where you just suddenly think, hang on a minute, I've been taken in by the dark side there. I've become one of those guys, you know.
So how do you work? You're saying you're just doing 4 days. How are you doing this? iPad, pen and paper?
Pen and paper. I just stuck to pen and paper. I mean, weirdly, for somebody who's online all the time, I'm quite technophobic. Like, I mean, this is my phone. I've got like a 2001 Nokia phone, which I didn't buy until 2009, I think. I got it in 2009 because I thought the internet was actually, not the internet, mobile phones, I thought that was a passing fad. And I remember actually writing to somebody saying, I think it's going to be like Pokemon cards. I think like, people are going to realise how much they're paying for this crap, you know, and they're going to be like, look at these bills I'm paying every month. We don't need this. It's not an emergency thing. I mean, how often is a murderer chasing you? You know, that you need your mobile phone for emergencies and all that. But I think it's here to stay, you know. So I bought this. I bought a 2001 phone in 2009. so that's, I mean, technology-wise, it's pen and paper, and then I write it out longhand, and then I type it up on the computer. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I mean, leading on to that, I kind of see your work as like an evolutionary process in that it starts one way, and then one of the artists will get involved and it will change slightly. Is that how it works for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like casting a movie, actually, like picking an artist. Like, I have a vision in my head of how something's going to be, and then an artist comes along that just feels right, you know, like I think, he's the guy. And sometimes I think of the artist as the concept comes together, like Kick-Ass was like that. Like the guy who drew John Romita Jr., he's Italian-American, so of course he's a gangster, and he's got all these gangster connections, so it just felt right that he's Martin Scorsese, like to do a New York crime book, and he did an Italian-American draw on it, so Johnny felt immediately correct for it. And I said to Johnny, I'm going to hold this up for 2 years, because I started it in 2006, and I said, I'm going to hold it back until you're ready, because you're the guy for this. Whereas other projects, I'm a little bit more sort of relaxed about it. I can sort of see someone else drawing it, you know. And so I just, it is like casting a movie. Like when Taron Egerton, when I saw his audition tape for Kingsmen, I was like, this, it's perfect, because there was so many guys who weren't right, who were brilliant, but just not eggsy, you know. And then I saw him and I thought, he's eggsy. And it's the same with artists as well, you know. So I remember Matthew Vaughn saying to me, go down and check out this guy, this is the one. And I think Matthew had been sending me up loads of little sort of like clips of guys and everything, and none of them felt right at all. And then when I saw him, it was just so bang on.
You're talking about films there as well. How you know, linked is the comic industry to the film now? Is there a sense that you're making a comic and at the back of your mind you're thinking of how it's made into a film, or is that coming from, you know, like Fox or somebody like that, or are you just focused on these comics?
I just focus on the comics, but I do very quickly sell them on as films purposely. You know, one, business-wise, it's insane not to. You know, if you can have a movie out at the same time as your graphic novel or soon after, you're going to sell 1 billion copies of your graphic novel. Like, I mean, Kick-Ass, we've sold 1 million copies of the first trade, you know, around the world internationally. It's probably sold more than that now. I remember when it hit 1 million a while back, and I'm under no illusion the movie helped. You know, the movie was a fantastic way of, I mean, getting even the Israeli editions would never have happened, or the Japanese editions would never have happened if it hadn't been for the movie advertising that, you know. And what that does subsequently actually is it helps the sales on your other books too, because people who like Kick-Ass maybe come and pick up your other stuff too. So it's fantastic. It's too great a thing from a business point of view, but also creatively. The number of people who will steal your stuff is astonishing. Like when the Secret Service, Kingsmen was originally called the Secret Service, when the Secret Service comic went out, people read it and just liked the idea enough that 3 people in Hollywood were making the movie. 3 different people were making the movie before we did. They started pitching it around town, like big directors. 2 of them were really big directors, and like people just steal stuff, you know. And I was amazed at this. I know it's hardly like a headline that some people in Hollywood are unethical, you know, but I just couldn't believe the audacity of it. They even had things like one guy was pitching it around town with the celebrity kidnappings, Mark Hamill, all this sort of thing. I mean, he literally was just it translated the comic.
Who were these people?
Do you know, I'd love to name them, but I said to him, I would love to name them, you know, and I said to my lawyer, and I said, no, don't, you'll just get into something and it could cost you money, and as a Scotsman, I'm not prepared to spend it, you know. But like, I remember one of the studio heads phoned us up and said, you'll never believe this. This director was in pitching your thing, because Matthew was going to direct this 2 years later. He was going to do Days of Future Past, and then go off and do Secret Service. And this studio head said, you won't believe it, this guy's actually going around town pitching your thing. So Matthew jumped off X-Men and jumped onto this, which at the time looked mental. Everybody said, are you crazy? You know, the X-Men's going to make a fortune. And we'd no idea this was going to end up doing crazy business, you know. So, but it was great. I mean, in the end it worked out brilliant. You know.
A lot of your work, I think a lot of your work is very political, and obviously, you know, we do see a lot of political tweets from yourself. Yeah. Is there, you know, an angst against the hierarchy in all of your work?
Well, I think it's a subconscious thing. Yeah, I think like it's interesting. Like some people think my work's really left wing, and some people think my work's really right wing. It's really interesting, you know. And some people read Ultimates, the book I did when I was starting at Marvel, and they said, "Oh, it's all you're doing is pushing your left wing ideology." And other guys genuinely is, "I'm never buying another one of your books for your right wing zealotry," you know. And what I think people, I don't know, maybe other writers don't do this, but I just sort of write for the character. So if I think one guy is going to be conservative, I'll make him as likeable as possible if he's the good guy, but he just happens to be a conservative. And likewise, if somebody's liberal or a left winger or whatever, I let the character do the talking really with it. So I think, but I think you're right. I think that there is a theme in there, which is the little guy up against the establishment, and essentially that's what Kick-Ass is. I mean, in a world of Batman and Superman and all that, he's the underdog, you know. Starlight is kind of about that. I don't know if you've read that. This is a thing that I wrote last year. We're doing as a movie next year, which is essentially one man up against the whole evil planet. You know, just one guy, like a Flash Gordon type story or a Buck Rogers kind of thing. And it is always a person up against an empire. I think that is a thread that probably runs through my stuff.
Talking about Kick-Ass and Kingsmen and everything else like that.
Yeah.
Do you struggle to watch your own stuff on TV?
The movies?
Yeah.
No, it's actually great because someone else has directed it and someone else has done the screenplay, you know. So you do feel that little step removed. It's like being a sperm donor, you know. So it's nice, like I provide the sperm, and someone else raises the kid, you know. But I drop in and sort of say hello and give the kid a lovely Christmas present and sort of see the kid occasionally, you know. So that's the role of an executive producer. Like, you know, you have the fun stuff. Like, I'm not sitting there 14 hours a day on set. I'm just coming in here and there for a few days at a time, sitting in the edit suite one day a week or something, not sitting there every single day, you know, sitting in test screenings, sitting taking notes what people are saying and all that. So it's really fun, it's really nice. So and if something doesn't work out, I think it's not my fault. It's great. So it's lovely. It's like an emotional bulletproof vest that's perfect. But so far, I mean, there have been 4 movies and I'm really happy with each of them, and we're shooting 8 over the next sort of 2.5 years or something, and I'm really delighted with the teams we've got. That's what I've really learned though, is if you surround yourself by people who are better than you, then you're always going to be delighted with the end result, you know.
Kick-Ass was obviously first big film.
Yeah.
Were you worried about how it was?
Oh no, Wanted was my first one actually.
Sorry, Wanted with Timur Bekmambetov.
Yeah, amazing. I've just learned how to say that actually. It's taken me 7 years.
It took me ages as well. But Kick-Ass, obviously, were you worried about how it was going to be perceived by the general public, because it is quite violent and quite kind of ultra violent in a way.
Yeah.
And at that time, Hollywood just wasn't doing that. They were sort of shying away and doing these Taken films that were 12A and things like that.
Yeah.
So were you worried about when it was coming out?
No, weirdly I never was. And it's funny, like Matthew, I remember the director, Matthew Vaughn, was a little nervous, but he'd borrowed 28 million from his friends, genuinely borrowed 20 million from his friends and self-financed the movie, you know. So there was a lot riding on it for him. Whereas for me it was just a laugh, you know. I was like, this is brilliant, they're making a film of this. Whereas for him there was a lot at stake, so he was a little nervous and he was so delighted whenever it was well received. But I think I was one step back enough to actually just admire it as a film. Like, he was too close to realise how good it was, whereas I was watching it, you know, just every week or so I was coming down seeing a new cut and thinking, this is great and everybody's going to love it. And weirdly, it never occurred to me that anyone could possibly be upset by it or anything. And what was interesting is, thinking back, it is so objectionable. I mean, there's so many ridiculous things in it, but in a way I'm kind of surprised that the furore wasn't more so. Like, there was the obvious things like Daily Mail, and I think there was maybe one or two people in the States, but generally it was very well liked and people seemed to like it. And I don't know if it actually says we've decayed that much as a society, you know, that nobody was that bothered by a 10-year-old kid dropping the C-bomb, you know. So.
You were talking about, obviously, Kick-Ass being quite well received.
Yeah.
Kingsman was, I mean, if Kick-Ass was well received, Kingsman
Yeah.
just went astronomical.
Yeah.
When you kept getting these numbers on email or whatever, did your eyes just keep going wider and wider? Were you shocked?
There's an interesting story to that, actually. Like, the day it was released, I can't remember, it was around Valentine's Day, but I remember, I think it opened on a Friday, and one of my friends used to run a studio here in Europe, you know, and he's actually jumped over, he's running another studio now, but like, he's got access to everything, right? He's one of those guys who'd run this thing for 20 years. And everybody's a phone call away for him, right? So if he needs data, he can get you data, right? And I was having a drink with him on the Friday afternoon. We were just sitting in a pub, and I said, I wonder how the movie's going. And he said, I can find out for you. And I was like, what do you mean? I said, Fox won't have the numbers till tonight. He said, I'll get them before Fox, you know. And I was like, really? And it was I think it actually opened on the Thursday night or something. I can't remember, but he says, I'll make a call. And he phoned somebody and he went, oh right, that's a shame. Okay, right. And I was like, what's a shame, you know? And what it was about 30% down on the opening day from what they expected, something like 30, or it's quite significant, 30 or 40% down from what we were hoping for. And I actually felt that I'd been punched. It was like, you know, when you're a kid, when you get an exam result in and you're like, oh, it's not what you were expecting. And I was like, oh, that's awful. And I was sort of trying not to cry, you know, just sort of sitting there having a drink, like, oh. And he said, well, you never know. He said, the next film should work out better. And I said, hang on. And there's a formula, see, from the Thursday night or whatever, you can work out what the opening weekend is. From the opening weekend, you can work out the opening week. Then you can work out the domestic total and have a very incredibly accurate sort of guess at what the worldwide total is going to be, all from one day, right? And I said, what do you reckon it's going to be? And he says, disappointing. He said, we had to hit about 180 to sort of break even, really, you know, 180, 190 by the time you count marketing and all that. And he said, maybe about 150 or something, 180. And I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And he says, well, you've got other stuff you've got going, it's no big deal. And I remember just being really disappointed, you know. And then what we found out is that it had been snowing really badly that day. I don't know if you remember, but the snow was terrible. It was that crazy snow at the beginning of the year. And there was actually massive chunks of the country where people couldn't get out of the house, so people didn't go to the cinema. And you never think of this stuff, you know, but when you release something January, February, that's a risk. So it was unbelievable. Snow trains were off and all this kind of thing. And then our Friday numbers came in and they were amazing, right? So the snow had started to melt a little bit, and then we were thinking, oh, this is good, it might break even. And then the Saturday numbers were through the roof, and I got them, I think, very late on Saturday night. Somebody phoned me about 1 a.m. and the Saturday numbers were astronomical, like brilliant, and I thought, this is amazing, you know. And then it just picked up from there. But there was 24 hours where it really was awful, and because it wasn't snowing where I was, I hadn't realised that's what the problem was. So in my mind, it started as a flop, and then it became a riotous success, and things like, I can't remember, I think we did about 45 million in Korea alone, you know. It was nuts. Asia really took to it, which was amazing, and I've been invited out to do all these book signings and stuff in Asia now, which is so exciting for next year.
I mean, that's fantastic, because obviously you wanted Kick-Ass, you know, and then on to the Kingsmen. I've got to ask you about something that wasn't well received this year, Fantastic Four.
Oh right, yeah.
Because obviously you were involved in the writing process.
Oh no, I wasn't writing, I was from the creative consulting kind of thing, yeah.
Where did you see the problem with that? What was the problem that it wasn't picking up people?
I think just sometimes things don't become massive, you know. It's just the way it goes sometimes, you know. Like, I remember watching, Dark Knight, like and thinking, "God, this could be too dark for people. This could be too much." But it just hit at the right time and was just perfect, and it did really well. And Josh's idea for this was to do a very dark take in Fantastic Four, which was very interesting, And Fox, give them credit, they are actually very good at stepping back and letting directors just get on with things. So like Bryan Singer rules the X-Men world, and you have Josh with Fantastic Four, and Josh's previous movie Chronicle's fantastic, so they respected him and just let him do it. But it was maybe just tonally not what people were looking for in that particular summer, like after Guardians and things being upbeat and all this kind of thing, maybe just it didn't hit the right note, and it was just one of those things, just sometimes it doesn't work out. But the thing that's interesting with superhero movies is if something doesn't work out in the past, people say, is the superhero movie in danger, But the hit rate of superhero movies is astronomical. I mean, if you look at the last 15 years, I think there's been about 45 to 50 comic book movies in that time, and only about 3 or 4 of them haven't made money. And if you think about that, it's insane. When you look at it across any other genre, it's unthinkable. Imagine 47 out of 50 romantic comedies made a massive profit, or westerns or gangster movies or any of these things. So for super comic book movies to be doing this well, I just think great. Overall the numbers are still looking great.
I mean, forthcoming movies. We've got Civil War, Captain America Civil War, which obviously you were involved in the writing and everything else like that. Do you know what's happening in the film? Can you tell us anything?
Do you know, I know very little actually, because I left Marvel to start my own company a few years back, and I think they regard me as the competition, so it's weird. Like, they flew the artist Steve McNiven down to the set, and I didn't get invited down or anything, and I know nothing about the movie, like literally nothing. I know they based it on my book and everything, but like, it's the same with the Avengers. I mean, the stuff that appeared in the Avengers from Ultimates and everything, it was, I didn't know about it until I was sitting watching it in a cinema with a paid for ticket, So I think when you leave a company, though, I think especially in America, when you leave a company, they do worry you're a spy, so they just don't let you back in, kind of thing, So strangely, I know as much as you do about it. I have no idea, but I'm sure it's going to be good. It's based on a good book, and and the Russo brothers are fantastic. I mean, that last Captain America movie was so terrific. And Marvel have been quite uneven, like their hit rate isn't as fantastic as you think, But I think they've really invested in some good people here, and I think that this looks good. There's been a couple of misfires over the last couple of years, I think, but I think this feels like one of the really good ones.